actually finished my TBR. Continish? No, to want to continue and finish it. Quiet now. Let's just see how long that's gonna take. Hello, neighbors. Hello, lovely bookworms. I'm Esmay from Paradise of Pages on Instagram and also on Twitter, and welcome to a new video. Before we actually get into what we're talking about this video, I have two things to mention. One is the angle is different, as you can see, because I am trying to not have any problems with the window that is over here. There's a lot of light coming in from that side, and it is messing up the lighting. So, sorry about that. You can now just enjoy more of my books, and hopefully it is okay. Secondly, my neighbors have been drilling and doing whatever to their house for the last 2 days, and I really have to film this video now, otherwise it's way too late. So if you hear anything in the background, that's why. Please forgive me for that. We just really need to get to this video, otherwise it's too late. So without further ado, let's just begin, because it is quiet now. Let's just see how long that's gonna take. So, I don't think I mentioned that yet, but today we are talking about the books that I've read in March. Let's just quickly get onto it. So the first book that I quickly want to mention is a book that I had to read for my studies, and that's A Shropshire Lad by A.E. Houseman. I'll put a picture up as usual. This is basically very old poetry. I really enjoyed it. Hello, neighbors. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it between 3 to 4 stars, so it was pretty good. Let's then just get into the books that I was supposed to read this month. There were 7 on my list, and I've managed to get to all 7 of them. I don't feel like it was cheating, but I did cheat a little bit. I'll get to that at some point. But let's just begin with some of those books. So the first book that I've actually read this month was Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nagan. This is the second book in the Girls of Paper and Fire trilogy, I think, and I was underwhelmed by this book. I have to say that. I do have to say that I incorporated this one into the readathon that I was doing, the Animal Crossing readathon. I don't remember which one I incorporated it into. I think the challenge for read a book with a bookmark, but I'm not so sure anymore. But yeah, I read this one for the Animal Crossing readathon, and I was underwhelmed. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first book, but I can definitely say that that was my own fault because I had wrong assumptions going into the book. This book I enjoyed more than the first one, but still expected more from, if that makes sense, and that's especially because of the ending. I think this entire book was unnecessary when reading the ending. So I think I gave this book 2.5 or 3 stars, so not that much. Yeah, it was a little bit underwhelming. I do really like the characters. This book also really hit home. If you've seen my vlog, you know that I actually cried over this book. But yeah, I was a little bit underwhelmed. The second book that I read this month for my Game of the Books was The Serpent's Secret, and just like Girls of Storm and Shadow, I was really underwhelmed. And I think that is due to the fact that this is not for me. I am not the audience for this book. I'm not supposed to be, like, I'm not the main focus of the readers for this book, and it showed. That said, if I had been a lot younger, say 13 or 14, which is about 10 years ago, I would have really loved this book. But right now, I just miss some of the aspects that I want, and if I put it against other middle grades that I've read, such as City of Ghosts or Ember and the Ice Dragons, it just doesn't compare. And I'm not comparing it plot-wise, but just my own personal enjoyment, and I think I gave this book 3 stars or 2, something along those lines, because I do see that it is a really good book for the right audience. So if you really love this book, it's just probably because it's not for me. Moving on, I actually have a lot of books. They're all down here because that makes it more easy for me. What are we grabbing next? Then the next book is also one that I read for the Animal Crossing readathon. I think that's the same thing with The Serpent's Secret, and this one I read for the musical element, and that is This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. This basically gets the same judgment as the previous book. I don't think this one is for me anymore. I didn't enjoy the characters. I didn't really like the story. I found it incredibly predictable. And I think the last 100 or so pages, I actually skimmed through it just to finish it. And I'm not sure if I should read the second one. Have you guys read this duology? Because I am just tempted to just leave it and not continue and just get to A Darker Shades of Magic, because the reason why I wanted to read these first is because I think that A Darker Shades of Magic is more up my alley. That said, I think I gave this 2.5 or 3 stars as well. This is a solid 3-star month apart from a couple of books. But yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of this one, I'm sorry to say. Let's move on to a book I absolutely adored, gave it 5 stars, cannot wait for the second one. And I am not surprised that I love this book. I actually expected it because I know that Femke loves it, which usually means that I love it too. That's Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Mahurin? I'm very bad with surnames. This book basically follows a girl called Lou, or Louise, and she's a witch and then gets into a marriage with Reed, who is a witch hunter, and that's basically the premise of the book, and there's a lot of mystery and depth and smut, literally, which I enjoyed a lot. I absolutely love this book. I went right through it. I think I finished it in one sitting apart from the first chapter, and was engaged from the first chapter onwards. I love these characters, I love the story, and I really want the second book now. From what I've heard, it is now stretched out into a trilogy. It was supposed to be a duology. I'm not sure what I think about that, because I know that some of the books that have been stretched out, like Red Queen, it's not for the better. But I still have hope, and I'm very excited that there are 3 books, and I hope that all of them will be as good as this one, because it was amazing. This was also my monthly book for my whimsical book club, and the book that Femke challenged me to read, so I'm very happy I read it, and I want to reread it. That's how much I loved it. It was amazing. Okay, I think there are 3 more books that I had to read this month, so let's just continue on with my least favorite of the month. I am holding up the first book because I don't have the third book, but I read Two Dark Reigns, which is the 3rd book in the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendar Blake, and the reason why I said in the beginning of the video that I got to all 7 of them is because I didn't finish this book. I did not finish Two Dark Reigns. I got 200-ish pages in and then called it quits. I wasn't interested anymore. I knew that the characters weren't my favorite, but I was engaged enough into the story to want to to want to continue and finish it. But this book, I just couldn't. I DNF'd it. I actually DNF'd it. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I'm not going to continue the series either. I am just going to leave it be and go on to other series. I know that this is just not for me. If it's for you, I'm very happy for you, but it's just not for me. Then the next book that I read this month and was on my TBR and finally finished is The Poppy War by R.F. Kong. I have to say that I listened to most of this. There is a scribed trial right now because of everything going on in the world, and so that you can read it a little bit more. And I listened to the audiobook for this one and I loved it. And the audiobook is amazing. Can definitely recommend that. And this book, it blew my mind. It was absolutely brutal, so I can't say that it was a happy and fun read, but I definitely think it was a very, very good book. It was also very cruel, very painful, very descriptive, to the sense that if I would have actually read this, I would have been nauseous. But I think listening to the audiobook really helped me here, so I could absorb everything but at a faster pace, so that I don't think about some of the things that happened in this book. Though I do have to say that if you are not feeling the best, as in if you're not in the mental space for anything brutal and very descriptive when it comes to war and casualties, don't pick this up. If you want a very important book and a very well written book, definitely pick this up. I gave this 5 stars. It was amazing, but it wasn't fun, if that makes sense. Alright, then the last book that I read for the Game of the Books TBR, which also meant that I finished my TBR for the first time in forever, ever, I have to say. I do think I have never finished my TBR before this month, so I'm very proud of myself. I actually finished my TBR, and the last one, if you've watched that TBR, is Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. This is the second book in the Witchland series. This one comes after Truth Witch, and same thing as with Truth Witch, I was underwhelmed by this book. I like the characters. I really like Sophie, Isolde, and Adrian, the Blood Witch. I can't really pronounce his name. I really liked Caden, who's a new character, and I really liked getting to know Vanessa a little bit more. I wasn't that interested in Merrick's story or Cam, which is sort of linked, and then Vivia. I wasn't the biggest fan of those. But that said, it was still an interesting book, but I feel like it wasn't filled with a lot of action, if you know what I mean. There was not a lot going on in this book, and I feel like it is really setting up for later books. I also had this feeling with the first book. The ending, though, was pretty action-heavy, which I did enjoy, and I went through it pretty quickly, so all in all, I did think it was a good book. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was still an okay book, but it wasn't my favorite for the month. Okay, then I actually have 3 more books to talk about, which is extras that I've read this month. The first one is actually the novella, which is called, I think, Lost Sisters, The Lost Sisters by Holly Black. This is basically about Jude and her sister, whose name I can't remember because I don't like her. But I did really like this story. I liked seeing the other's point of view. This was also the first book that I finished this month because I just had to wait a little bit and only had my phone with me and realized that I had the ebook on that, and I thought, you know what, I'll just read it. It's fine. I think I gave this 3.5 stars as well. It was pretty decent. Wasn't a full-fledged book, so I can't really say too much about it, but it was interesting. So if you want a little bit more in this world, the world of fairy, I can recommend it. Then I incorporated a reread into this month because I actually recommended this to Shanice and then thought, you know what, I want to read this again. And that's The Forbidden Wish by Jessica Curry. I love this book. I actually talked about this book in my favorite standalone video, and I actually explained what this is about, so I won't be going into that again. If you want to know what this is about, go to Goodreads or that video. I talk about a lot of great standalones if you want to have more recommendations. And I just loved going into this again. This story is great. I love the characters, and I gave it 5 stars again. I usually don't change my ratings once I reread a book because I think it is only fair that I leave it at the rating I gave it the first time around, unless my opinion really changes, but it usually doesn't. So yeah, I put a reread in here. I loved it. It was amazing. Very good book. Then last but certainly not least, I have one more book on my list, and that is The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Liebenzeller. I listened to most of this book as well because it was on Scribd. I'm not sure if it still is. And this book, I actually read this just after I finished Serpent and Dove, and it was the most amazing couple of days. I read Serpent and Dove and was on like this level of this book is amazing. Then I read The Shadows Between Us, which is on kind of the same level. I absolutely loved it. I know that it's not the best story out there and plot-wise, and it's predictable and all that stuff. I know that. But I loved this book so much. It won't be a surprise to you that I gave this 5 stars. It's also absolutely stunning. I hope that Fairy Loot is doing another batch of this cover. I hope I can find the photo for the cover for Fairy Loot. If not, it's not the red one but the purple one. If you're seeing a red one, imagine this purple and you have the Fairy Loot edition. I just love this book so much, and I already want to reread it, and that's how much I love it, so I'm gonna be doing that somewhere. Maybe I should do a month of just rereads for my own personal enjoyment. That said, that is the final book. I did read quite a bit, which I didn't expect, considering we're all sitting at home, and usually I tend to forget to read if I sit at home, especially with my parents, weirdly enough, because I want to spend time with them probably. Anyway. I am very happy with myself that I read so much, and I know that I have a hefty TBR for next month, so let's hope I can get to those as well. That said, what have you read this month? Was it an enjoyable reading month for you? For me, it was mostly average, apart from a couple of books that I absolutely enjoyed and loved, but I'm still really happy about that. This is everything for this video, so I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and press that little bell icon so you get post notifications every single time that me or Femke posts, and I hope to be seeing you in the next one. Bye!